One New Year's Day, in the Tournament of Roses parade, a beautiful float suddenly sputtered and quit. It was out of gas. The whole parade was held up until someone could get a can of gas. The amusing thing was this float represented the Standard Oil Company. With all its vast oil resources, its truck was out of gas. Even though Christians have access to God's power, if we do not avail ourselves to it, we will run out of power. The power given to us is provided by the Holy Spirit. We have all the power we need to be conformed to the image of his Son, according to Romans 8:29. But how do we tap into the power, or the way the Bible puts it, be filled with the Spirit? You see, we can be indwelled by the Spirit, yet not filled with the Spirit. Confused? Well, no worries. Ephesians 5:18 will help clear it up for us. Ephesians 5:18 says, "And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit." The more a person says yes to wine, the more it will begin to influence their behavior for bad. I'm sure we've all seen someone drunk. Not good. But the more a person says yes to the Spirit, the more it will influence their behavior for good, for godly good. Letting the Holy Spirit influence our lives, which leads to seeing his power at work, requires us to give up control and be willing to do what he says to do. Galatians 5 describes it this way: "Let us also keep in step with the Spirit." When you were a kid, did you ever try to walk in the footprints of somebody else at the beach? That's a great image for us. The Spirit takes a step in our lives. So what do? Keep in step. As a kid, we didn't necessarily know where the steps in the sand would take us, maybe into the water or into the parking lot. But when we keep in step with the Spirit, we know where it's going, somewhere powerful and towards something that looks like Jesus. Whenever you feel the Spirit prompting you and you are hesitant to take the step of faith, remember that. He's taking you somewhere powerful that will help you look more like Jesus. If we don't keep in step with the Spirit, for whatever reason, be it fear or just plain selfishness, we won't experience the Spirit's power in our lives. It really comes down to that. The Bible describes this in two different ways. When we don't keep in step, we either quench the Spirit or grieve the Spirit. The Bible talks about quenching the Spirit in 1 Thessalonians 5:9. Do not quench the Spirit. The Bible talks about grieving the Spirit in Ephesians 4:30. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. So here's a memorable way of understanding the two. We quench the Spirit when we say no, when the Spirit's saying yes. And we grieve the Spirit when we say yes, when the Spirit's saying no. How do you stop a fire? Pour water on it. But there's a fire you don't want to put out. The Bible refers to the Holy Spirit's power as the Spirit's fire. When the Holy Spirit is prompting us to do something and we don't do it, it's like putting water on the fire. And when we keep saying no to what the Spirit is wanting us to do, pretty soon we barely have a flickering flame for our spiritual lives. When a person is grieving, oftentimes people will take time off work and friends will bring in food. Why? Because people who are grieving have a hard time focusing on work. People may need to grieve, not work. When our lives are grieving the Holy Spirit, it doesn't leave room for him to be working in our lives. Saying yes to sin grieves the Holy Spirit and affects his working in our lives. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Is sin weighing you down? Is the Spirit grieving because you've ignored him? If so, we are missing out on the exciting, power-filled life he has for us. So how do we know if we are truly being filled by the Spirit? by the fruit. We'll be filled with fruit when the filling of the Spirit is flowing. How's that for a tongue twister? Jesus said in Matthew 7:16, you will recognize them by their fruits. Galatians 5:22 through 23 tells us what the fruit of the Spirit is when we're experiencing His filling. The fruit that will show up in our lives is love. And love will show itself in joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I don't know about you, but those sound like great qualities to have in our lives and in our relationships. So how about it? You want to see the Spirit's power flowing in your life? Want to see the incredible fruit of love oozing out of your life? If so, say yes when the Spirit says yes, and say no when the Spirit says